Hey guys, this is Brad from Dallas Geek, and welcome to the first episode of Star Wars 101. For those of you who have seen our other videos, you've probably figured out that both Mike and I are big Star Wars fans. However, we realize that not everyone out there has been as invested in Star Wars as we, or in this case as I, have been. So, I decided to create an introduction to everything Star Wars to help the new and passing fans of the franchise get caught up with what's going on. To begin with, the biggest argument within the Star Wars fandom ever since Disney purchased Lucasfilm has been the Canon versus Legends debate. Essentially what that means is, when Disney took over Star Wars, they took all of the books, comics, games, and audio dramas that existed before, and said their stories no longer counted as valid history in the Star Wars universe. Instead, the only stories that mattered were the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, the Clone Wars animated movie, that thing we pretend didn't happen, and the Clone Wars TV show, the CGI one, not the really cool traditional animation short series that came out right before Revenge of the Sith. All other stories that had been made before Disney that were not one of these were thus rebranded as Legends. For Disney, this was their way of still making money off of sales of the old stories while keeping them separate from the new stories that they would be making. Unfortunately, longtime fans, myself included, saw this as an insult to the legacy that kept the Star Wars franchise alive during the dark times in between movies where Star Wars could have been easily forgotten. Now, any comic book fan will tell you this type of retcon has been happening with Marvel and DC since the very beginning. For superhero stories, retcons happen every few years for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes it's to fix plot holes that were created by various authors writing for the same character without paying attention to what their predecessors had written. Other times, it's because a character or an entire group of characters have been written into a corner and the stories have nowhere else to grow. And still, many other times, it's just because the publishers can change things, so they did. However, this was a new concept to the Star Wars franchise, and as such, has caused a lot of difficulties within the fandom. So, what does this all mean? Well, the most obvious thing has been the constant comparisons between the new canon and old Legends stories, whether that's a comparison of how a character was written or developed over time, or a comparison of stories to see if canon or Legends had the better writing. It all comes down to a desire by the fans for the old stories to still matter. Even still, these comparisons are valid and need to be explored, but not for many of the reasons they're debated about now. What Disney has done with the Star Wars canon has been done, and there's no changing that. Could they come back and reinstitute a separate timeline to allow the Legend stories to continue alongside the new ones? I mean, sure. They can do whatever they want with their stories, but if we're being honest, they'll never do that. Instead, the reason that we should be comparing the old and new stories is to see what was done well before, what has been done well now, and where the new stories can improve to give us the best possible Star Wars experience that we as the fans could possibly receive. Now, I realize that Disney has no reason to listen to the thoughts of a small creator like us in order to influence their narrative decisions. However, if more and more fans start these type of discussions rather than simply complaining that the new stories aren't like the old ones, then maybe, just maybe, our voice can be heard and Disney will actually listen. In the upcoming Star Wars 101 videos, I'll be analyzing all aspects of Star Wars. Stories, characters, ships, planets, and so on, while giving as many recommendations for books, comics, games, and whatever for you to continue to enjoy. Until next time, this is Brad from Dallas Geek saying, see ya.